Hello everyone and welcome back to another installment in the Cut Content Encyclopedia. Today, we'll be wishing for a nuclear winter in Obsidian's Fallout New Vegas. The development of New Vegas is notorious for being a rocky endeavor, with the development cycle known to be rushed and incomplete by the game's launch, resulting in a lot of content ultimately being cut from the final game. Despite this, fans flocked to the wastelands of the Mojave countless times over. Thanks to these dedicated fans, many mods reincorporate cut elements in order to provide a more fully realized New Vegas. So, we'll be looking at those mods as they appear. Alright, let's crack open the Fallout New Vegas Cut Content Encyclopedia and see what all we're missing in a fan-favorite entry.
Truth is, the game was rigged from the start.
Angel is a cut-friendly super mutant that is tied to the Gomorrah, suggesting that the character is supposed to be an escort or character inside the hotel. However, their scripting does not appear to be finished, as spawning them in will result in your typical hostile super mutant NPC. This NPC is the beta character for veteran Atticus. The two NPCs share similarities, but have a variety of differences. The beta Atticus features similar dialogue options, but unique from that of veteran Atticus, and less polished. This version of Atticus also appears at the fort, instead of at the Legion safe house where veteran Atticus will sometimes spawn. The script surrounding this version of Atticus also appears to be incomplete or bugged, as killing him will fail the quests, Kaisar's Hire, and Beware the Wrath of Kaisar.
What do you need?
Every faction in the game features an unused NPC with a Battlegear name, acting as a generic fighter NPC for the specified faction. Overall, 9 of these characters exist.
What do you need? 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 What do you need?
These 3 characters, appearing as old men, are generic beggars that are intended to populate Freeside. They all have scripts directing them to sit in specified places in Freeside, but these spots were never established in the script. Therefore, the characters go unused. Betsy, appearing as a standard Brahmin model, is attached to the cut characters Kevin Hargrove and to the Freeside Northern Gate. Internal scripting suggests that Betsy was to be some sort of companion, at least for a time. A single, incomplete quest is also attached to Betsy and her companion status, though the quest only contains 2 dialogue options and nothing more. Billy Bettis, a cut-traveling merchant, would have roamed between the wastes south of the New Vegas Strip, the NCR Sharecropper Farms, and the Aerotech Office Park. He appears to be fully functional and able to be traded with, so his exclusion must have had something to do with the lack of polish or scripting errors with his roaming directives. Bohr is a cut protectron that is associated with the side quest in Vault 22. There stands the grass. In lore, Bohr assisted Keely with her research inside Vault 22. Bohr has unique dialogue as well, allowing the player to ask of Keely's whereabouts and information about Vault 22. These are 2 unused NPCs intended to be located in Boulder City. Both a male and a female have unique dialogue lines.
Train's not working yet.
Lily, Jimmy, and Becky are all 3 NPCs located in the Cell for Dead Void Creatures. The 2 children, Becky and Jimmy, are Lily's grandchildren, who once lived with her in Vault 22. This guard is an unused doorman for casino on the New Vegas Strip. Though the exact casino has not been specified, his inventory includes objects found on male Vault 21 patrons, so it's likely that he was to guard Vault 21. If the player has the Wild Wasteland perk enabled, a random encounter can be triggered in Freeside. 3 old ladies wielding wooden rolling pins will appear and attack the player. Catty Clara was supposed to be the 4th, though for unspecified reasons, the number was dropped to 3. While Carlyle does appear in the final game, this unused model was, at some point, intended to be used as the character's corpse. These are 2 unused bodyguards for the character Dixon. The pair wear Merc veteran outfits and carry around 22 varmint rifles prior to the ammo type being changed.
Hello,
Stationed at Camp McCarran, these characters would have been background additions to the camp. All have their own unique dialogue lines, but were ultimately cut in order to free up memory space. They likely would have operated similar to the training Brotherhood of Steel Paladins seen in Fallout 3. This version of Elizabeth, like the alternative version of Carlyle, was intended to be used as her corpse. Prior to the quest requiring the player to go out and find escorts, the player would have been able to encounter male and female escorts inside the Atomic Wrangler, only existing in test cells by the time of the game's release. The developers at least considered the idea of having female powder gangers present in the game. However, it appears the female variants will ultimately cut from the game. At some point in development, if the player were able to gain the support of the followers of the Apocalypse on behalf of the NCR, a follower's doctor would have appeared at the Battle of the Hoover Dam. The NPC has dialogue options as well. NCR Ranger Gomez, named NCR Ranger in the game, is a cut ranger from Camp McCarran. Her dialogue seems to imply her involvement to some degree in the quest, "I put a spell on you." Gomez will respond if the player or some other NPC kills her, as if she's flagged as an essential character similar to the mechanics in Fallout 3 and 4. Hawkins used to have quite the importance in the game, specifically surrounding the Cut Quarry Junction quest, but after that quest line was cut, the character was nearly entirely cut as well. His body is still inside the game, inside the Quarry Junction, though he's been renamed to a generic powder ganger. His original purpose was to kickstart a questline involving Sloan and Quarry Junction. The player would find Hawkins being attacked by a Deathclaw, and upon rescuing Hawkins, would make their way away from Sloan. Upon speaking with Chomps Lewis, the player would come to realize that Hawkins was the sole survivor of a band of powder gangers engaging in a raid on the small settlement, of which they lost. The player is given a few options through dialogue following the Deathclaw encounter. The courier could let Hawkins tag along as a companion, could confront him if they had the knowledge of the raid on Sloan, refuse to help Hawkins with the Deathclaw all around, or even give him caps. The player could also ask if Hawkins knows a Samuel Cook, the powder ganger leader and organizer.
I promised you a reward, so here, all the caps I have. You can't put a price on life.
Visually identical to the Ignacio Rivas in the final game, this version of the character is unassigned to any faction, and does not carry the East Terminal password, and does not possess a final character scripting. Overall, he appears to be either a placeholder or an early draft that was scrapped in order to start from scratch. Mentioned earlier, in reference to Betsy the Brahmin, the animal would have belonged to Kevin Hargrove. He would have hung around Betsy's pin, and upon speaking with the player, would have offered to let the player purchase Betsy. This is likely done as a method of increasing the character's carry weight, offloading certain items onto the Brahmin. Koch is a name sentry bot intended to appear inside of Vault 22. Players would have been given the option of repairing Koch as part of a mini-quest inside the vault. While the bot can still be spawned in and fixed as the quest requires, Koch won't actually do or respond to anything.
And who are you to come before me? You don't bear the mark of the bear, yet you are ready for battle.
This version of Legate Lanius wears a generic Legion armor instead of the Legate's unique armor set. This version was likely intended to be used at the end of the Legion's questline. A Legion messenger, created as a random encounter and decked out in random raider loot, would have approached the player and delivered a message. Unfortunately, since no dialogue exists for the character, the message he would have delivered is unknown. It could be possible that this messenger would have either attacked the player or given him tasks or materials based on their standing with the Legion. Marilyn is a cut Securitron featuring a woman's face, similar to Jane found in the Lucky 38. Marilyn is taller than other Securitrons, and her faction standing remains intact when spawned in. The reason behind her removal stems from glitches in her voiceover that could not be corrected by the time of the game's release. Mayor Steyn is the of-mention-only mayor of the ravaged settlement of Nipton. Prior to the character's complete erasure from the game, the mayor, most likely as a corpse, was supposed to appear in Nipton. Interestingly, his faction standing is that of the Powdergangers, and his NPC, for some reason, appears to be that of the Top's chairman. This was likely done as a placeholder before another model was created, or intended to be a reused asset to preserve memory and space. Mentioned previously in the section on Underpass, Meg Reynolds was supposed to appear in the game as the settlement's mayor. She would have assigned the player the quest of fixing the water purifier in the settlement. A set of Mojave settlers and NCR soldiers were supposed to appear in Camp Gulf. The Mojave settlers would begin siphoning water from the camp's purifier, of which the NCRs would dish out some insults before killing a few of the inhabitants. The gut encounter and NPCs would have helped to solidify the tense and aggressive interactions between the Mojave settlers and the NCR forces.
Hi, I'm Fretwell.
Les Fretwell, an NCR MP, was to be located behind the NCR embassy on the Strip. Fretwell is connected to the unused quest Jailhouse Rock, and once the quest itself was cut, the character had its spawning disabled. Despite this, hopping into the Gek allows the player to re-enable him, though he's far from a complete NPC.
Fretwell again, brah.
Hello?
A grand total of 18 different NCR mercenaries were created to be allied with the faction. At some point, the NCR hiring mercenaries to help carry out work across the Mojave was considered, but ultimately dropped. These characters are randomized generic NPCs meant to appear on the northern strip and around New Vegas itself. The NPCs do not offer much and have generic outfits, loot, and weak weapons. They were likely created to give the area in and around New Vegas a more populated and lived-in feeling.
That tower on the strip, the one you can see for miles?
Pablo Miller is an unused mercenary that wears Three Dogs glasses from Fallout 3. Overall, nothing of significance remains of the character, if anything substantial was created for him at all. This unused early draft version of Paladin and Ramos gave him a different appearance and inventory. Instead of sporting a Gauss rifle like his finished counterpart, this version uses a plasma rifle and is missing the Hidden Valley bunker key. This unused early version of Papa Khan has scripting and faction allegiance tying him to the Great Khan encampment near Quarry Junction. This alternate Papa Khan also uses 2 unused pieces of armor, both of which are in an incomplete state.
I'm not sure you should be here.
If the player chose to have either mayors from the Powdergangers or the NCR take over the city, both factions would receive a deputy from their faction to help patrol and take care of the town.
Thanks for bringing the NCR to town, stranger. Things are finally looking up for Prim.
What do you need?
Judging by their name and their allegiance to the NCR faction, these characters were likely intended to appear at the sharecropper farm as caretakers, in order to populate the lands around New Vegas.
You lost?
According to Joshua Sawyer, Ranger Chauncey was a super mutant posted at Foxtrot, primarily because of its proximity to Jacobstown, much like Ghoul Rangers are posted at Echo due to its proximity to Searchlight. He was supposed to wear a standard flat-rimmed Ranger hat of normal size, i.e. comically small on him. When asked about why Chauncey was removed, Sawyer relayed that he did not quite remember, and that he was wondering that as well. The characters of Rose and Sylvia were intended to be corpses found in the burnt-out town of Nipton, and mentioned in the journal of Mayor Steyn. The pair looked nearly identical, with the only distinguishing features being their hairstyles.
Morning. What do you need?
Roy Gottlieb, a Vault 11 survivor back when survivors were considered, is possibly tied to more quest content surrounding the Vault 11 quests. Either that, or the NPC was created in order to place audio lines to voice-only characters. A few other characters exist as Vault 11 survivors as well, namely Vault 11 Survivor, Vault 11 Survivors as an audio log, Vault-Tec recording speaker, and Roy Gottlieb. Based on what little information remains of Sen Lin's significance to the story, it seems as though the character was an early version of what would eventually become Red Lucy. A few topic dialogues point towards the character enlisting the help of the player to find specific eggs.
I'm not sure you should be here.
Sergeant Warren Jacobs is a member of the NCR faction. It's unclear which camp he was stationed at or if he was an NCR soldier at all. Given his leather armor, it's possible Jacobs was a mercenary as well, though the rank in his name could detract from this theory. Technically created for testing purposes, but too good not to include. Testicles was designed to test a variety of debug features, primarily changing outcomes of quests and factions.
What do you need?
Tom Dooley is a merchant who deals with stolen goods from both living and dead adventurers. He would have interacted with Kevin Hargrove as the pair would be business partners in their enterprise. Rodface's randomized device would hint towards Tom Dooley and his trades, but given Tom was ultimately cut, references no one in the game. Tom would have appeared near Freeside North Gate, but is currently disabled. As with MP Fretwell, Trooper Willis is a cut NPC intended to be associated with the cut quest Jailhouse Rock. He would have been found behind the NCR Embassy along with 2 other unnamed NPCs. Overall, he does not have much to say or do besides dish out generic dialogue lines. Ulysses made his grand debut in the Lonesome Road DLC, but was intended to be a companion in the base game. Due to time constraints, he was shifted around until he turned up in The Divide, leaving a trail of influence and stories in his wake until his reunion with the Courier. Chris Avalon mentioned at one point that Ulysses was a complicated character in terms of some of the hooks into the storyline. Josh Sawyer mentioned that Ulysses' dialogue file size was incredibly large, so much so that the team was running out of disk space, and given how late into development they were, they did not have time to cut down the dialogue and instead opted to cut him entirely, stating that Cass was our second biggest companion after Ulysses, and then Ulysses was like much more than her, and literally just would not fit. He was too big, too powerful. It happened so late in development that didn't seem practical. Both Avalon and Sawyer felt this cut companion detracted from the overall New Vegas experience, as the game would lose a good companion that had a more sympathetic outlook on the Legion. Sawyer mentioned how Ulysses' absence was a huge loss for New Vegas as a whole. Ulysses would have acted as a character the Courier could have bounced ideas off of when it came to the conflict between the Legion and the NCR. He was designed to really reinforce the idea of the faction mechanics, adding even more weight and depth to the Mojave's view of the Courier. It also appears that Ulysses was not always intended to have a gas mask. However, in order to better differentiate Ulysses from other characters and give him his own identity and uniqueness, the gas mask and duster attire was created. Overall, his subtraction from the game was a major detraction from the overall New Vegas experience. Several unused NPCs exist that were meant to fill out the partially cut settlement of Underpass. They would have roamed around and occupied homes similar to Goodsprings. The crashed vertibird that could be found in the southern reaches of the map was supposed to be home to this NPC as well, though most likely as a corpse near the crash site. The pilot would have had a red keycard to Vault 19, a card that would have been useless. This is most likely a reference to a similar corpse in Fallout 2 that had a useless yellow keycard. In the original design and storyline for Prim, Viking Vance was going to be a site of a massacre. The player would have entered into the casino and found many corpses and signs of bloodshed. These corpses would have occupied the casino in the first version, but once the storyline surrounding the settlement was changed, the corpses were removed. This character, a part of a cut scripted encounter outside of Goodsprings, would have been a trader the player could have interacted with. The adventurer could be found at the road sign near the Gene skydiving intersection. After this, the character would patrol the surrounding areas before returning to Goodsprings. The character also has some tidbits of dialogue and information to relay. The character, charged with guarding the water pump, would have done just that. However, later in development, the role was given to Tapper and the NPC was discarded.
Hassling Hector, huh? Got a thing for little kids?
During the quest, The Whitewash, the player would have been jumped by 3 NPCs seen here after interacting with Hector at the cistern. The dialogue is still in the files, but the characters were disabled.
Right. We're just looking out for our own. You understand? We're, sorry to bother you.
All around, not much remains of the character besides his model. No dialogues, no scripting, no packages. Just an empty shell of an NPC. Given the fact he wears Eulogy Jones's suit, it's possible the character was attached to the cut portion of Rodface's quest, wherein Shamo kills him for the suit. But this is speculation and has not been confirmed. Aster is a character that wrote in a journal, but not much else is known. Where the journal would have been located is unclear. Intended to be located either in or near the Decadicup mine, Beggars would have been an NCR soldier. His dialogue options and editor ID seem to indicate that Beggars is an early version of the character Reynolds. Their model has been deleted from the GEC, with only a few dialogue options remaining that possibly attach him to the quest, Anywhere I Wander. Bitter Bob and Roger the Codger are two NPCs that would have been pickpockets located in Freeside. Their models, dialogue options, and nearly everything associated with them was either never created or entirely deleted. All that remains of the characters are 2 lines in Freeside's script file. Jack Wilson is mentioned in a cut note. The character is a civilian contractor responsible for running the operations at Quarry Junction and Boulder City. Jack also seemed fond of the Strip, the Gomorrah in particular, of which he regularly visited. Matsumoto is similarly a cut character of mention only. He was to appear in a factory terminal entry inside the H&H Tools factory. Matsumoto apparently contributed to another character, Anthony House's descent into paranoia, by continually asking him if he was okay. Felicia has been nearly completely wiped from the game's files, with only a small vendor package remaining in said files. She would have been located at Sunset Sarsaparilla HQ as a vendor with which the player being able to trade Sunset caps for a variety of items. Grigorsky, in short, basically does not exist. So little evidence remains of his existence is amazing. A single blank dialogue topic with the name V. Grigorsky Agree is all that remains of them. The only other evidence, the form ID of the line, seems to imply that this character and Sen Lin, another cut character, were related to some degree. Both Privates Big and Harcourt are 2 female NCR privates intended to be stationed at Ranger Station Foxtrot. The characters would have some sort of rivalry going, though this can only be found through a few spare dialogue options left in the GEC. Their models are no longer present in the game, but can be re-added through Simply Uncut for New Vegas. The Ride Master is a Great Khan NPC that is associated with the cut quest VMS-48. The role of this NPC was to induct the player into the Great Khan through some sort of ceremony or rite of passage as part of the cut quest. The only remnants of this character exist in the form of dialogue lines. Finally, we have the cut NPC of Wrench. By the time of release, Wrench existed as references in the game's files. It's likely that Wrench was involved with the quest, The Whitewash. The courier would buy a super tool kit from Miguel's pawn shop to return it back to Wrench. The character likely would have assisted in repairing a damaged cistern or a water leak of some sort in relation to the quest. Outside of these references, nothing else remains of Wrench. Hello everyone, and thank you so much for watching the video and sticking around until the very end. I appreciate your patience in waiting for this video. I know it has taken me some time, much longer than expected, and I do feel guilty for the time it takes between uploads, as I said in my last video. However, with it being the end of the semester and a lot of crazy stuff going on, I have to focus more on schooling and teaching than making videos. I plan on working on more uploads on upcoming breaks so that you'll have more content available for the viewing. The next New Vegas related video will focus on cut creatures, armors, and weapons, so keep an eye out for that upload in the foreseeable future. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next video.